guys. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Katia. I am a senior project manager. I've been working in project management for around 7 years now. I have mainly worked in Web 2 projects and working with dOrg and the Good Morning team has been my first experience working with a DAO and managing projects within a DAO. So I am excited to share with you guys this workshop and this presentation that I put together that kind of highlights some of the experiences that I had as a project manager coming into this environment. Also, for those who are interested in getting more involved in project management and perhaps, taking on that builder role as well. This will be a good intro to how you can start that off. And I also just wanted to touch a little bit of everything. It's really hard because it is such a big topic. But we'll see. If you guys have any questions, feel free, to let me know and we can get to them at the end. So just starting out, for myself, project management principles, I put every project goes through predictable stages called a life cycle. A life cycle of a project is a series of phases that a project goes through from initiation to completion. This is true for every project. From, a project can be having a list of groceries and going to the grocery store, getting those groceries, bringing them back. That's how basic a project can be. And within those, within those phases of a project through initiation to completion, in order for it to actually be a project, it needs to hit all of those different phases. So the project life cycle consists of 5 process groups, and it's going to be initiating the project and planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing, which is the exit phase. And within these 5 process groups, there's actually 49 individual project work processes within these process groups. Everything turns into inputs and outputs, and it gets really complex and a little intense. But not every project has to go through every single process. Every project does need to have the following though. So every project needs to start. So there needs to be some type of initiation to start the project. This can look like a kickoff call, agreeing to, what the definition of done is with the team, creating the work breakdown structure, having that work schedule. All of this is going to happen during that phase. And carrying out the work that actually needs to get done and ending the project would all be considered, part of that life cycle. The extreme predictive project planning side of project management is called waterfall. So this is very sequential. This is, okay, once I do A, I get B. And then after I have B, I can move to C. And after C, move to D, and thus far. And then the extreme adaptive side of project management is called Agile. Agile is pretty much what most teams use nowadays. Waterfall is important for certain, aspects of a project because there are things that need to be completed sequential. But overall, Agile is really the form of project management that a DAO needs because it needs to be adaptive. It needs to be extremely adaptive considering the way that a DAO operates. And what makes a project manager overall is this phase right here. So monitoring and controlling. This is what makes the difference between a team just taking on a project and then having a project manager within that project and working with the team. That PM is mainly responsible for, besides all of the phases, but this is pretty much where a project manager shines, because they're going to be helping with monitoring the project, controlling it, and making sure that they're guiding it into the correct steps and within scope. This one is our Agile Manifesto. Because DAOs work in an agile environment, I thought it would be helpful to kind of just put this out there for anyone who has never seen this and isn't aware of it. I'm not going to go through every single one, but I do think that it has a lot of valuable information. And if you go through it, you'll realize that a lot of it lines up directly with a lot of our own values and how we work with our teams. And it really focuses on 4 big themes and values. So it's always prioritizing individuals and interactions over any process and tool. It's always prioritizing like working software. This would be like Jira. This would be like dOrg, any software that has been created to manage a project, over comprehensive documentation. So Agile is completely against having, a ton of different documentation in tons of different places and making it harder to track what you're working on. And a lot of what this manifesto is saying is also prioritizing collaboration over contract negotiation and responding to change instead of following a strict plan. So this is very flexible. This is about simplicity and being efficient and effective. 2 of the most popular methods, and personally my favorite methods for working in an agile environment, is Kanban, which is what we have dOrg set up as. And this methodology is a visual approach to project management. So this is those cards that you see and that you'll see behind, in this GIF right here. It's a methodology that helps reduce inefficiencies. It's those little post-it cards that famously we had in offices, but on software like Jira or dOrg or even Monday. Actually, I don't think Monday has it, but it's the same sort of thing. So you have like the post-it setup. And the name literally means billboard in Japanese, so that's exactly what it's based off of. And originally, it was actually used for like managing, like manufacturing for cars. So it's really interesting that it's been adapted by a lot of tech teams as well. But it definitely works, and having it visual also helps the team see what to prioritize and really what they're working on and what's in progress. So Scrum is probably my favorite way to work with a team, but it does require the team to train if they really do want to work in a Scrum fashion. Usually the project manager will be involved, but there's also a key role, which is a Scrum Master. So Scrum is a short sprint approach to managing projects. It's the most widely used and popular Agile framework. The term Agile describes a specific set of foundational principles and values for organizing and managing the complex work that is done. And Scrum is incredibly powerful because of the values, the principles and practices that take place within all of the different cycles, and it relies on a very cross-functional team to deliver constantly. So one of the most important parts of Scrum is just fast feedback, and the project manager or Scrum Master in this case would be responsible for continuing that feedback loop. And in project management, that's highly important because really I think that has been one of the most important parts while I've been working with dOrg is just seeing that constant feedback loop helps the team get moving and helps things get done. And when there's a pause in that feedback loop from a project manager's side, that's when we see a project kind of get idle. So that constant feedback loop and just touching base with the team to see what they're doing, if they need assistance with anything, if anything's blocking them, and also providing feedback as to, any deliverables that they have ready is what's going to keep things moving ultimately. But Scrum is advantageous for quicker innovation, continuous improvement, rapid adaptation to change. You fail fast, learn fast, and accelerated pace. So Scrum is just known for getting a lot done in fast timing. Project management at a DAO. So adopting agile ideas and some Scrum values to the way you work with your teams has been most important. And I think anyone who's getting into project management at dOrg or any DAO will need to adopt a lot of these ideas and values. It really goes hand in hand with how dOrg functions, and autonomy and collaboration are most important. So it really works. Some Scrum values that align with dOrg already are, courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness. It creates an environment where people feel free to share ideas. So if someone is free to share their ideas, they're going to take ownership of their work and collaborate instead of dictate. Ways a project manager can do this is by having team members choose the work that they want to do. And it's really important because once you choose what you're doing within a project, there's already inherently like a sense of ownership and wanting to get that done. And one thing that was interesting that I looked into was Harvard Business Review did a study where they showed that psychological safety for a team allows for moderate risk taking, speaking your mind, creativity, and sticking your neck out without fear is essential in order for market breakthroughs and innovation. And they found that, ancient evolutionary adaptations explain why psychological safety is both fragile and vital to success. And the brain processes provocation and pretty much any conflict with a boss or a competitive coworker as a life or death threat, which is insane, but it's the same response. The amygdala has the same response, and it ignites a fight or flight response. So it's really act first, think later. And the brain kind of shuts down perspective and analytical reasoning. So one of the most important things really for innovation is for, feeling safe in that environment to actually ideate and take a risk. And a project manager can create that environment for their team. I think DAOs already create the environment, but a project manager can also make sure that, everyone has a voice, everyone is able to be heard, and, prioritize what the team wants to do so that everyone feels like they are, owners of their work as well. Understanding the nature of Web3 projects and the way a DAO operates is essential. Learning Web3 projects is like learning another industry. So coming in, I did not know much about Web3 projects. I didn't know what a smart contract was. I was, in the dark. And I was really excited because while I've worked on a lot of other projects in the Web2 space, it was an opportunity to learn and grow and kind of just expand my knowledge of project management by working with a DAO and also just touching these new projects that I haven't. So even though I've been managing Web 2 projects for a number of years now, some examples of like nuances that I learned from research were, servers for like economy apps can go down and affect like worker income, whereas Web3 servers can't go down. They use Ethereum. So because of all the thousands of computers on their back end, they're not going to go down. And for me, that was like a mind blown moment. Like, just like, what? I'm just not used to understanding that. And I think ultimately what makes a project manager so effective in the project they're managing is really understanding the limitations and also understanding how it works. So just getting more involved, reading, finding the articles from reputable places so that you understand more of the Web3 space is ultimately going to be more helpful when a project manager is doing any type of estimation, project schedule. And I did learn, a lot of limitations within the Web3 space, whether it's UX and how a lot of Web3 applications can, require extra software, education. It's a hurdle for some designers, and accessibility and cost as well. So there are limitations that, if you are aware of them, you can plan for them and just put the project on a better track from inception. This is not traditional project management, and understanding the challenges that come with working in a DAO and Web3 projects have been, like I said, very important for me. A challenge, but a good one. So in DAOs, as we know, there's no reaching out to managers. There's no hierarchy for a chain of command. This is why using Agile is going to be the most important piece for this whole thing. And I truly believe it would be the only way to work with the DAO. And scheduling and coordinating can even be a challenge with so many different time zones. So it's nice to set up a designated touch base with your team that everyone can commit to, whether it's at 9 o'clock in the morning or 9 at night. It really doesn't matter as long as the whole team can be present and agrees to it. I think it's definitely essential with everything we have going on, and everyone being in different time zones and doing different projects. So sending a recap to the team so they're just aware of status, or a team member who couldn't join is always going to be a good idea. Reaching out to team members and asking them for updates as well is always helpful in case someone can't join a sync. And there's so much flexibility as a project manager at a DAO. And because there's so much flexibility within any DAO, it's up to the project manager to create that structure that works for everyone. So it doesn't need to be, and that's kind of one of the things that I struggled with the most when I came on. I was like, I'm used to having so much structure and having, daily check-ins and, just really reaching out to team members on a more frequent basis, and, just learning how to create structure, but also working with the team so that I'm making sure that everyone is on the same page, but I'm also not restricting anyone. The best way to work with a PM for anyone who is, trying to have a better understanding on how to initiate things with us, or how you can help us so we can help you, is keeping us informed. Any changes, any big ideas. Honestly, your project manager wants to know it all, and we really do need to know it in order to do our job effectively. So anytime there is a change in a project, or there's an idea in a project, you should let your project manager know. This is so that they're always in the loop, and at the end of the day, they're the one tracking the project as closely as they can. So if that information is not being relayed, they're not going to be able to do their job as effectively. So we want you to tell us everything. If there's one person who needs to be the channel of communication, it's going to be your PM. And by you telling us, this is always going to help us avoid scope creep. I'm sure many people have heard that term before. And, avoiding scope creep is most ideal for a PM. And this is really where you can shape up a project and guide it so that it doesn't go off the rails. Allow us to guide you. A lot of times teams may see PMs as restrictive, but we're an ally and we understand, risk is always greatest in the beginning of a project. So being forced to plan in little time is the easiest setup for failure. And, we want to guide you. So I think as much time and information as you can give a PM, the better. And also, hold on, let me go to the next slide. The inception of a project. So a project manager is always going to be most influential in the beginning of a project. A good project manager always remembers that there's people on the other end. I think inherently as well, this works great with a DAO. But at the end of the day, we have to understand if something isn't moving forward, why isn't moving it forward? We have to reach out to that person and just have a conversation as to if there's anything missing on their end, if there's a reason that they haven't been able to get to the next step, and just reaching out to find out what it is that is blocking them. So we can't move forward until we define all of the true requirements of a project for a client or internally. Each stakeholder has different requirements. This is very true. In order for us to understand everything that a project needs, we need to have every stakeholder, so every person involved in the project, involved to let us know what's required and what's needed for the project. The planning of a project is the most important part in project management. The defined scope process selects the final project requirements a team moves forward with. So the project manager then develops a detailed description of the project, product, service, or result. And when this plan is, when we plan this is when we put together the scope of work and eventually create an SOW, or just an SOW within, with the scope of work. But once an SOW is signed, this really initiates everything to move forward. So this is the phase when the PM will set up a kickoff call or initiate the project has begun formally to all of the team stakeholders, anyone who's involved in the project. The kickoff call is where the team should work together to come up with their definition of done for the project and really who wants to work on what. And the definition of done is a term that you'll hear in Scrum a lot. It's really a shared understanding of the final work that needs to be delivered, whether it's internally or to a client. But by determining this, though, this is your team. This is just ensuring for your team that there's transparency, and also you're ensuring quality of work because you are going to have teammates that are going to choose the work that they want to work on. So everyone is always doing better work when they get to choose what they're doing. This kickoff call is essential because it inherently reduces the risk of misunderstanding and friction between the team. So I would definitely, not kickoff call, this definition of done is essential because it inherently, will reduce the risk of misunderstanding and any friction between the team because everyone has already agreed to what done looks like and what they want to work on. And it's also important to just remember that the DoD can always evolve, and that's just based on the project evolving as well. estimating as a PM, this is a pretty big part of project management. Um, I feel like I would have to do a presentation just for estimating, but I think one of the things I've learned, and just in general that I see would be very beneficial is, always accounting for learning curves. So learning curves are usually not added into a time or a budget estimate, but they definitely need to be, especially in a Web3 environment. And the more juniors you have on your team, you definitely want to add that in. You need to account for a learning curve, and we always need to add a contingency budget for error. And I think most teams have seen when that does not happen, you can start eating into some margins or getting too close to your budget. Bottom up estimating is going to be the most accurate way to estimate, but it is very time consuming. This is when you do estimations of work based on like the lowest and most detailed form of of the work that needs to get done. And when estimating a cost for a project, I tend to lean towards triangular distribution, which is something that I use to kind of estimate the work that's needed. So it's a management technique to determine, probable outcomes of future events based on the information that we do have. So there is uncertainty and risk calculated within this. And ultimately, you would use this formula that's listed here for duration estimates based on, 3 points. This assumes distribution is providing like an expected duration, and there's a level of uncertainty for the unexpected duration. And you would divide it by 6 in the case that if there is a best case scenario that is vastly different than the worst case scenario, I would just, instead of doing it divided by 3, it would be divided by 6. And ultimately, I think for project management, you have to do what works. From all of the courses and certifications that I have done, I can honestly say that what has been most important in teams that I've worked with is organization, communication, having that constant feedback loop for a project team, and owning the project ultimately and doing whatever it takes to remove any roadblocks for the team and listening to their needs. You have to be the person to facilitate the team working together. Successful team syncs, aka meetings. In order to have a pretty successful meeting in general, if it is a lot of topics that your team is going to go through, an agenda is always necessary so you can stay on track. A visual is usually very beneficial. Notes are taken, whether it's from the PM or another team member. It really doesn't matter. It just matters that notes are taken so that anyone who missed out can be updated as well. Next steps are provided, and associated deadlines are also shared with the team. The key people, any stakeholders that need to be involved in the meeting, are able to be present. The project manager helps the team stay on track, setting ground rules if needed. So maybe we say, okay, for the first 10 minutes, we're going to talk about this. And then for the remaining 20 minutes of this meeting, we're going to touch these other items that we have. In general, I would recommend not having a meeting really more than, if it's a sync for a project, I would keep it to 30 minutes or under. Write down concerns of other stakeholders. This is called a parking lot, and the project manager keeps record of all of these concerns so that they can be addressed. I have noticed while working with dOrg that sometimes we would get off track and start speaking about a project, an idea, another project, another idea. And I realized it was due to our team just not meeting as often as we needed to for the amount of work that we were trying to accomplish. So, the instance we did, start meeting a little bit longer, things definitely got better in terms of getting through our most actionable items and going through status. And I know that now it's just very important for us to go through status first and check in with everyone as to their needs before we go into specific ideas and upcoming projects and updates. So, I think shifting things based on how they work for the team as well is always going to be the most important, and just being there as assistance and help, and making sure that you're facilitating whatever needs to be communicated within the team. All right, thank you guys.